Wife left me after discovering I had a son from a previous relationship, and now I'm forced to choose between my children and a child I just met. My wife Amy, 35F, left me, 36 male, after I was contacted by an ex and discovered I had a son. I tried to post his age but my post gets removed, so I just want to clear up that he was born 3 years before I married my wife and there was absolutely no overlap or cheating in my wife and I's relationship. This happened a month ago and I requested a paternity test. Amy didn't say much while we waited for results but agreed that if I was the father I needed to be in my son's life in every way possible. 2 weeks ago the results came back that I am the father and immediately Amy said she wanted a divorce and began packing her and our children's belongings. I was confused and asked her why but she just cried and said she loved me. Amy and I have been married for 10 years. Our marriage has been pretty damn close to perfect. No serious arguments, same goals, we've traveled the world together, we have a beautiful home, rewarding careers, and fantastic children together. I am so heartbroken that she's thrown everything away. I feel like my life has been destroyed. I have no clue what to do. I have begged and pleaded for therapy and my wife refuses. She has started the divorce process. The next issue is custody of our children and terms of divorce. All 4 of our children are young, not even in school yet. She says if I agree to give her primary custody she will let me have the house and will not want child support, and will give me all of our savings so I can raise my son as his mother is struggling. She also agreed to pay for some home help for me. I am disabled and need help occasionally during flare-ups, which she usually provides. I told her I could afford it on my own but she insists as she says she wants to help out since she won't be there. She will move across the country with our children but said she will bring them for at least 2 weeks every 2 months so I can have a relationship with them and will pay for me to fly out to see them whenever I want. I don't know what to do. I have no family to discuss this with because 2 of mine and Amy's children are adopted. And my parents and extended family think my biological son is more important than them, which is obviously untrue. It makes me feel horrible but I don't even know my son. It feels like I'm losing everything for a person I don't know. And I know he's a child and I shouldn't feel that way. But all I ever wanted was my wife and kids. And while I will love my son and take care of him, I don't feel like he is my kid yet just because I haven't really had time to get to know him. A month ago I wouldn't have recognized him if I saw him on the street. I feel so much guilt for feeling this way. Amy and I both are fairly well off but she is more so than me. She offered to hire me a lawyer of my choosing if I don't agree with her terms. I told her again I could afford it but she says she just wants to make sure I get a fair deal. But I just can't. I don't want a divorce or lose my children. I love my wife and children more than anything. I just don't understand her motives or why she is doing this. It feels like I have to pick my son or my wife and our shared kids. I keep trying to make sense of it in my mind. She will not tell me any reason for wanting to get divorced. She is even being incredibly nice to my son. His birthday had recently passed and she got him a new game system. They haven't met, she said say it was for myself and his siblings. She even told me what her nephew, same age as my son, is into so that I can get things my son might like. I don't even know what advice I'm looking for. It feels like my life has been completely ruined. I'm in therapy but it doesn't seem to help. A month ago my wife and I were planning on trying for another baby and picking our next vacation spot, and now I'm going to be divorced. How do I move on? How do I not unfairly resent my son when I know it's not his fault? I keep hoping there's a way to convince her to stay. But I don't even know what the problem really is. I'm hoping someone else has been through learning they have a child after 10+ years and know where to start or what I can do to either move on or convince my wife that this doesn't have to happen. Any advice at all is appreciated though. Want a comment to clarify a few things. I have not asked my wife to be a caregiver to me. I rarely have flare-ups bad enough that I need a caregiver maybe once a month, on a bad year, to a few times a year, and my wife was insistent our entire relationship on caring for me because she wanted to when I did need help. If she was burnt out of stressed, there was always an option to hire help. She was the one who did not want home help. We divided our workload equally in our household and had a nanny that assisted us with much of the housework as well as regular cleaners etc. As far as finances, while she earns more money than I do, we are both quite well off. We both work around the same amount of hours and contribute equally to household bills. I believe if my wife was unhappy, she would have said something. We have never had any issues in our relationship, and any problems that arose she would communicate to me and we would work together to solve. We always did check-ins in our relationship to make sure we were on the same page and could communicate in a healthy way. The more I hear stories for commenters, the more I believe she just did not want to be a step-parent. Second, while I have no way of proving that my wife was not cheating, I do not believe she was. We regularly used each other's phones, spent a majority of our time together, and she has never given me a reason to be suspicious. Another thing mentioned is that she is jealous because she is infertile. This is not the case. We were actually getting prepared to have another biological baby of our own before this happened. My wife has no plans to move immediately. Once we found out paternity and she said she wanted a divorce, she wanted to be closer to her family. They are located across the country. I do not believe there is another man or anything else, as her family would not approve of dating or remarriage since they are quite religious. From my understanding, she has no solid plans as of yet because she wants to make sure we have a custody agreement we are both happy with and we both believe is fair. I am in contact with a lawyer now. I told my wife I did not find what she wanted to be fair in terms of custody, and we are now trying to figure out how we could have court-mandated 50-50 long distance with her paying the travel fees and associated costs. I know I have been downvoted many times for believing my wife, and no doubt I probably am an idiot, and have received many messages calling her names and saying what a bad person she is. I know I sound ridiculous, but I still feel the urge to defend her. I do not feel like she is trying to steal my children, or punish me. She has never been that kind of person. She is the kind of person who keeps packages of supplies in her car for homeless people she sees. The type of person who spends her free time trapping feral cats to get them neutered and seen by a vet. She is the one who gives a large sum of her salary to charity and spends hours every week volunteering. She is the type of person who made sure the children we fostered saw their biological family more than state-mandated supervised visits, and used her own time and resources to make it happen. She is genuinely the best mother I know. She has went out of her way to explain to our children that while we may not live together anymore, I may have a new member in my family, that I will always be involved in their life and love them very much. Update 1. Since then my life has completely changed. Some days it is very hard, but all things considered I am doing well. The biggest change is that my wife and I divorced. She moved with our shared children to the opposite coast to be near her family. We had an easy split, as we both agreed it was best for our family. I am very thankful for that. However, it is difficult not to see all of my kids. The first month was the hardest, especially as we did not want a divorce and we had a hard time not treating each other like spouses, which delayed us healing. My son is doing much better now that is just the two of us. After our divorce, my son opened up about her in therapy. I now understand much more about his behavior. He is much happier now as an only child as well. He is really thriving with my attention. He is still struggling with his mental health, but his care team sees progress, as do I. My other kids have seemingly forgotten my existence, which hurts, but is also better than them being sad about the situation. I constantly try and call them, but at their age I get about 5 words in before they lose interest. My ex-wife and in-laws try and get them to stay on the phone and talk to me, but there is only so much connection you can have over the phone with kids their age. They seem happy, which is all I can ask for. I am at peace knowing that both my son and my younger kids have someone that loves them in their lives. I miss my family, but I feel I made the right choice for them and my son. After our divorce, I asked my ex-wife to lay it on the line. Why did she want to leave before even meeting my son? She had written me pretty consistent letters from the day we found out, until the day we divorced. She gave them to me once our divorce was finished. I read over them several times. She gave several reasons for wanting to split. She felt she had chosen me to have a family with, and I had already had a family. If she had wanted strangers in her life, she would have married a man with kids the first time. She specifically chose someone without kids, and felt she made a mistake, as now other people would have some control over our lives and a stranger would be in our home. She loved our life, marriage, and knew it was all about to change because of my past decisions. She also said she knew that kids coming out of situation like his were likely to have trauma. She underlined many times that while I was a good person, she knew I'd throw our family under the bus to make up for something I had no control over. I wrote to her to tell her she was right and that I was sorry things turned out how they did. Overall, I am happy. I don't regret my decisions. My son is thriving with me, and my other kids have a great mother and maternal family. I hope my son continues to improve, and I selfishly hope that as time passes and he gets older and more stable. Update 2. First, about my son, our relationship has deepened in ways I couldn't have imagined. Those first months were so awkward. He was clearly testing boundaries, quiet and prickly at turns, and even therapy only seemed to give us language to skirt the real issues. Now, though, we're becoming a team. It's small things, cooking together, deciding how to decorate the spare room, which is now unequivocally his, and developing dumb inside jokes that, to anyone else, would sound like static. He's into building model kits and I have zero experience, so we muddle through together, getting glue on everything but the actual parts. For his most recent therapy assignment, do something outside your comfort zone together, we went to a rock climbing gym. I made it all of 2 meters up the wall but cheered him on from my crash mat like a fool. His pride at making it to the top still makes me grin. School has also changed for us. His mother couldn't care for him for medical reasons, so the arrangement shifted from scheduled visits to us being, well, a real household. The truth is, my son's still working through old wounds. Sometimes he asks hard questions, like why I wasn't there before. I've tried to answer honestly, I didn't know about you, and I'm so sorry about that, and he seems to trust me a little more each time. His therapist noticed he's calmer, and he's even making friends, something his care team says is new for him. Meanwhile, my relationship with my ex-wife, Amy, is strange but arguably better than I could have imagined given the circumstances. The divorce had its formal bitterness, sure, but after that, we managed something like real, if cautious, affection. Our conversations are logistical but warm. She sends me photos of the kids at dance class or building sandcastles at her parents' lake house, usually with a little note, I built this herself. She says it needs a shark to guard it. Ideas? She stuck to our agreement. Every other month, she brings the kids to stay with me for 2 weeks, and I fly out when possible. At first the visits felt staged, everyone on best behavior, but that's worn off. There was one night when my oldest daughter had a nightmare, and for the first time since the split, she crawled into bed with me, sighing, "I miss your stories." I nearly lost it right there. It's not perfect. FaceTime calls still often devolve into chaos or abrupt goodbyes as someone gets distracted or a sibling wants to click buttons on the screen. The hardest part remains the spaces between, the quiet after everyone leaves, the echo of little voices that aren't there. I sleep with the TV on some nights just to have the background noise. There's another development. The boys, my son and my ex's nephew, finally met over Thanksgiving. Amy came, too. It was weird, like hosting a summit for preteens. I'll admit I was terrified. My son was nervous, the idea of cousins was foreign, and at one point he asked, "So, am I really their brother? Or?" We settled on family, no matter what, at his pace. The weekend was full of video games, kitchen disasters, Amy burns grilled cheese with impressive consistency, and one wild Monopoly game where the only rules seemed to be chaos. For the first time, I glimpsed what a blended, complicated but functional family could eventually look like. On the legal side, custody is now more like 40-60. Amy insisted I keep the house for stability, and stands by her word on shared finances, but we have a parenting app to coordinate everything. We even got the court to approve an experimental schedule. The kids spend summers with me, and every holiday on a rotating basis. Not standard, maybe, but it's working. The letters Amy gave me still break my heart in new ways when I reread them. She's not bitter, just honest. I think we're both different people than we were a year ago. Maybe we know each other less, but also better. For a while, I held out secret hope we might reconcile, but that's faded into something like gratitude. I saw for myself during the Thanksgiving chaos that she is, whatever else, a phenomenal mother. I respect her decision now even if I mourn it. One shock, my parents finally came around. I'd written them off after their cold reaction to the adoption and, later, the arrival of my son, but recently, my mother wrote a long letter apologizing. She'd been overwhelmed, she admitted, by the suddenness of it all and her own expectations. "Children don't split love, they grow it," she wrote. I don't know what shifted, but she wants to visit this spring. My son is wary, but says he's cool with it. Maybe that's all I can expect for now. If you're still reading, things are far from perfect. I have days I am paralyzed by grief over the life I lost. I still wake up sometimes reaching for Amy. My kids still sometimes ask why we're not all together anymore. I wish I could give them answers that don't sting. But the chaos and weirdness of my new life is balancing out. The guilt for not feeling instantly fatherly to my son is fading every time he hugs me goodnight or asks for advice about a friend or reports a good test grade. I'm finding, awkwardly and painfully, that there is life after devastation. That families, broken, stitched, new, are still families. And, above all, that it's possible to lose nearly everything and still find room to grow something good out of what's left. Update 3. If you told me last year that normal would someday mean pizza crust stuck to the side of a 3D printer, a Christmas tree covered in both superhero figurines and unicorns, and a Google Calendar that looks like a Rubik's Cube in a blender, I would have laughed, or, more likely, cried. Yet here I am. And honestly, sometimes I still cry, but not as much as before. A lot has happened in the last few months. My house, which used to feel absurdly big with just me, and sometimes my son, so quiet he'd disappear into his books or the sound of his breathing, has filled with echoes, real, bouncing ones. My parents, yes, both, came to visit for the first time, and stayed for a chaotic week. I wasn't sure how it would go, and neither was my son. My dad is a man of few, sometimes unhelpful, words, so, what's your favorite? Sports team? You into those? And my mom overcompensates with anxious, detailed plans and too much food. The first night, my son retreated to his room early, and I just sat outside his door, quietly panicking about how I'd forced together these people who barely knew how to speak to each other. But by the third night, my son emerged, clutching the first birdhouse he'd built with my dad in the garage. He handed it off with a hasty "we're making another one tomorrow," and my mom, teary-eyed, handed him a Ziploc bag of chocolate chip cookies just in case you need a midnight snack. It sounds trite, but the moment cracked something open for all of us. My dad, in lieu of a speech, gave my son an ancient Swiss Army knife and an awkward pat on the shoulder. "You're getting too tall for Legos all the time." My mother, possibly in a fit of nerves, taught him the family chicken pot pie recipe, then spilled flour everywhere and let him pelt her with dough scraps. It was messy. Awkward. Human. After they left, my son asked, "Do I call them Grandma and Grandpa?" And I told him honestly, "If you want. Or just their names. Or something you make up." He's settled on Grandma, and just Dave for my dad, for now. It feels like blooming, or the slow melting of an iceberg. Meanwhile, the custody arrangement with Amy took an unexpected turn this spring. For reasons neither of us could have predicted, her mother was diagnosed with a serious illness, and suddenly Amy needed to stay on the East Coast for several months to help out. She asked, carefully, if I could keep the kids for an entire summer while she handled hospital trips and family logistics. I said yes before she could even finish the question, even as it terrified me. So, this summer, my house became, overnight, one part summer camp, one part mad scientist lab. The kids, all four, plus my son, who is still feeling out the brother thing with cautious optimism, created a patchwork schedule. Tuesday MasterChef nights where no grown-up is allowed to supervise. Friday movie marathons ranged from Disney to disaster films to a documentary about the Loch Ness Monster, my son's current obsession. It wasn't all picture perfect. My youngest had more than one screaming match over who got the blue toothbrush. My son would sometimes close his door and shut everyone out, and more than one dinner devolved into all of us eating ice cream before anyone realized we'd finished the real food. But the chaos came with moments. My two oldest, sitting cross-legged on my bed, teaching my son how to braid friendship bracelets. A spontaneous rainstorm that started as shrieking and ended in laughter-soaked hugs. The kids started banding together, not in a neat sitcom way, but with real, awkward, growing affection. One night, my son hesitantly confessed to me, "I feel like I belong here, even if it's only for a little while." He looked embarrassed, so I just draped my arm around him. A small thing, but it was enough. I wish I could say I navigated it with wisdom. There were nights I collapsed after dinner, overwhelmed by the sound, the mess, and the guilt, still, unbelievably, the guilt of splitting my heart between old and new. I realized, though, that being a parent isn't so much a matter of absolutes as a constant, stumbling improv. Sometimes you sing the lullaby wrong, sometimes you let them eat cereal for dinner, sometimes you have to apologize for losing your temper and start again in the morning. My ex and I, after the initial logistics, found our communication thawing, even warming. When she called for the first time in weeks just to vent about the hospital bureaucracy, I listened without offering solutions, just listening. After we hung up, she texted, "Thank you. I know I made the right choice for the kids." There's a peace in that. I even found myself confiding in her about my own confusion, how I worried I wasn't enough for the kids, or for my son. She reminded me of something she wrote in one of her letters: "All you ever had to be was honest, even if the honesty is messy." An unexpected twist: my son's biological mother, who has been struggling but, with help, has stabilized, visited for the first time since custody shifted. It was under supervision, as part of his therapy, just an afternoon at a neighborhood park. I was bracing for a setback, but instead, my son asked to join her for lunch and spent the car ride home talking about wanting to visit again. He's old enough now to have his own boundaries, and I've promised to support him however I can. It's delicate, but, for the first time, he's talking about his three families. In his words, one I started with, one I landed with, and one I grew with. One last thing, which I'm still processing. My kids, all of them, have started writing our story together in a shared Google Doc, my oldest idea. It's full of doodles, wildly inaccurate family trees, and questions they want to ask each other when they're older, like what is Dad's favorite flavor of chips? Nobody knows, not even me. Sometimes it feels like I'm reading the first scribbles of what family healing really looks like. I don't have a tidy ending. My heart is still divided, my mind still busy, my home a jumble of laundry, voices, and, sometimes, silence. But I no longer dread that silence. I'm building a new shape out of my life with my kids, sometimes lopsided, sometimes precarious, always real. I can say now, with a steadier hand, that the thing you think will break you forever might only break the place that needed to be made bigger. Update 4. To say this spring has been wild would be an understatement, and I'm more convinced than ever that life has an awful sense of humor. There was a moment, a few weeks ago, where I seriously considered that some sitcom screenwriter had crawled into my attic with a bug and decided to spice up my story for ratings. But here goes, and thanks to everyone still following this whirlwind, writing these updates helps me survive the weirdest, best, and worst of it all. Amy's mother's illness turned out to be more complicated than anyone predicted. After a series of rough hospitalizations and a new diagnosis, Amy was needed around the clock. The kids' summer with me turned into something indefinite, an open-ended, we'll get through it together until we don't have to. Suddenly, instead of 2 weeks, 2 months, or even a summer, I was full-time solo dad to a tangle of small, smart, loud, grieving, healing kids, plus my own still new son. I'll be honest, panic gave way to adrenaline, and I started color-coding everything. I had a Kanban board for daily tasks, a Google Home set to remind me to eat, and enough sticky notes on the fridge to wallpaper the entire downstairs bathroom. But routines eventually became bonding rituals. In the absence of predictability, we built new traditions. Pancake Mondays, total the griddle twice, science experiment Wednesdays, why did the kitchen turn green? And sleepover Saturdays where everyone dragged mattresses into the living room and took turns picking the worst movies possible. Sharknado 4 is still our reigning champion. My son, ever the outsider in the past, slowly but surely wove himself into the circle of chaos, teaching the younger ones to cheat at Go Fish. I pretended not to notice, negotiating sibling debates, and confiding in me after lights out about missing his old routine, his birth mom, and, tellingly, how he now had people he missed here, too. The kids started inviting friends from school over for family game day. They recruited my son as the gamekeeper, he takes rules seriously, and I found myself refereeing epic Nerf battles, wrangling snack demands, and introducing my son to parent gossip. No, the neighbor's cat is not a secret government agent, but I wish he were. Then came the field trip debacle. I attempted what I believe to be a genius move, solo parenting a crew of 5 on a day trip to the Natural History Museum. We lost one child, temporarily, inside the planetarium, had a full meltdown over a broken vending machine, and my youngest projectile vomited fluorescent blue slushy across a diorama of early mammals. We were politely banned from the gift shop, for now, and the kids voted unanimously that it was best day ever. Even my son, ever the skeptic, made a rare joke: we should go back next week and see what they do when 2 slushies explode. I think that's as good as praise gets. Meanwhile, Amy and I, unexpectedly, found ourselves messaging daily, not just about logistics, but about life. She'd debrief me every other night after her mother's appointments, and I'd describe small victories or utter disasters from this side of the country. It was less like exes and more like co-pilots with different cockpit views. That changed one evening when Amy's call was somber. Her mother's health had plateaued, possibly for the better, but Amy's father's mental health was fraying, and she was more or less holding her entire family up by sheer force of will. She told me, in a small voice, "I miss being a mom more than anything. I know this is best, but I ache for them." I couldn't fix that. But I could reassure her. I sent daily kid journals, videos, and each Sunday, the kids all made video TV news shows with updates for Amy and Grandma, complete with interviews and invented commercials. Dad's laundry service, won't lose all your socks. My son, initially hesitant, started volunteering to run the camera and even appeared on screen by week 5, deadpanning, "I've learned that if you leave cereal in the bowl too long, it becomes modern art, and that's why I'm moving to France." On the family front, my own parents, newly energized by their last visit, devised an elaborate, utterly unwanted, plan to help me out. My mother arrived unannounced, wheeling a suitcase and a blender, for green smoothies. Children's health is very important, ready to organize my pantry, redecorate the kids' rooms, and implement a sleep hygiene regimen. By the 3rd morning, my son and my oldest daughter had conspired to hide the blender cord. My mother, far from offended, seemed grateful for the excuse to teach them the ancient family recipes: read, cookies and extremely buttery noodles. My father, now officially Dave the Grandpa, taught backyard whittling and somehow convinced everyone that cleaning up pine cones could be fun, if you called it pinecone Jenga. There was not a single injury, which I count as a parenting milestone. The kids are growing bolder by the day. Group projects for school became group projects at home. My son, once hyper self-contained, staged a test kitchen where they all invented disgusting but hilarious snacks. Pickle peanut butter sandwiches scored an abbreviated May, but banana chili sushi was, I quote, heinous in a good way. At bedtime, after wrangling 5 wildly different routines, I'd tell them stories of when the world was full of secrets and strange families built new kinds of magic. Often, they'd fall asleep before I finished, but my son, who used to keep his door closed, now sometimes tiptoes back to chat, questions tumbling out. Why do people leave? Did you ever hate your parents? Am I supposed to love everyone now? Can I? The truth, I still don't have all the answers, but I do know this: love is slower than guilt, stranger than grief, and far messier than any storybook. Sometimes I say that out loud. I don't know, but I know you don't have to love anyone before you're ready, and sometimes I just stay and listen, hear his breath even out, and thank whatever force in the universe dropped all this, into my life. This week, one final surprise: I got an email from my son's biological mom's caseworker. She's stabilized, working, and starting to ask about more regular, unsupervised visits next year. My son took the news with a kind of thoughtful quiet, then started making a list, in Crayola marker, of questions for a mom, and stuck it on our fridge. I added one, at his invitation: "What do you want from me?" He smiled, reading it. "That's a good question for all of us, huh? We'll navigate it, all the overlapping, impossible, ongoing circles of connection and distance, together." My family looks nothing like I imagined. But most days, in the mess and the noise, I'm grateful for that. If you're reading this, still grieving or lost or furious or bewildered, you are not alone. You can love again, even if it's slower than anyone expects, and you are allowed to grow a new shape around the gap. Families break, heal, change, and sometimes, with enough imperfect efforts, they grow into glorious, ragged, joyful patchworks that hold everyone just as they are. That's what we're doing here. So if my story helps you at all, keep going. The next chapter might be weird, but it might just be wonderful too.